Okay, welcome back, guys. Here we are with another edition of In the Wings on a very gloomy December day. It's just snowed yesterday in Leeds.
I think it's been snowing today as well.
Has it?
I can't deal with it.
I got really, really excited when I saw a bit of white outside, and not seen that in a long time. So today we're talking to Asif Khan. In the Wings, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, is a strand in offstage, highlighting companies and artists that we think deserve more recognition for the work that they do, and we want to expose more of their stories to a wider audience. And that's what In the Wings is. And Asif Khan is definitely one such artist that people need to know more about. So Asif Khan, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
All right, pleasure. Yeah. I'm just happy to hear you guys are doing this work as well to help artists from our background. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Well, you're part of it. You're part of the story now. So hopefully this is going to be an inroad to many people who come and see your characters and your work. So Asif, I'll get straight into it, I guess. You started off like us as an actor. I think you went to RADA. Just tell us a bit about that sort of early career that you had, especially because it all started off in Bradford for you, didn't it?
Yeah. I was born and brought up in Bradford, so kind of always enjoyed doing it at school. And then the opportunity came to really start doing plays when I knocked on the door at Theatre in the Mill on the Bradford University campus. And from there, we did a co-production with Asian Theatre School at the time, and I'd never heard of them until then. And we did a show at the Alhambra studio together. This was years ago. And before then, I'd never even heard of the Asian Theatre School, which it was a branch set up by, it was a branch of Red Ladder Theatre Company. And after that, I joined, and there was about 20 or 30 people into the same thing as I was. And I didn't know that existed. With them, we did plays in Bradford, took them to Leeds Playhouse, even the Contact Theatre. And then from 2006 to 2009, I went to RADA for 3 years, and then sort of been acting and writing since.
And that early, the Asian Theatre School that came out of that initiative with Red Ladder Theatre Company, was the original cohort, was it 100% Asian, or was it a mix of?
It was probably about 85% Asian. We had, a few black and white people who were taking part as well, and that was fine. It wasn't just only for Asian people, but it was just a way to try and encourage more South Asian people to get involved, and that, I think it worked, because there's so many people, friends I know that were part of it, who are still in the industry today in some sort of shape or form. And it was just a good place to meet similar people, because growing up, I didn't meet a lot of artists a lot of people from my background who were into the same things as I was. It's not very common to see, especially from Bradford, South Asian person going into theatre and acting. So
what was it a part of the? Sorry to cut you off like that, but what was it? Because this is obviously completely like mine and Sam's story. So I understand that, and I'm sure there's loads of people watching who are closet actors, closet Bollywood actors usually. Well, I was a closet Bollywood hero, but and they find it, because it is a mysterious industry, isn't it? We're working in an industry that not many people know how it works, and how things are done and what the processes are and what the inroads are. I think that's obviously got a little better now, because of all these initiatives and all the great work that companies like Freedom Studios, for instance, are doing. But it's still difficult. There's even for experienced actors like yourself and artists like yourself, it's still a myriad of different ways to do certain things. So what was it that at that time for you, can you remember, were you going into Asian Theatre School or being part of that knowing that you wanted to be an actor, or was it just a sort of, let me go down and see how it is? Because I know that's what it was for you.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it was first, initially, I tried to join a theatre group, and I kind of felt at the time it was a student theatre group, and I was at Leeds University for a year doing a different course before I went to Bradford University. And I tried to join the theatre group there. I felt there was a bit of snobbiness, and it wasn't really inclusive. But then when I got to Bradford University, I saw an advert for a play and a little bit about Theatre and Mill, saying we've got auditions for this play, and we have meetings every Monday at 6 p.m. So that was the initial thing that I just went to knock on the door. Very nervous. I've always been really shy growing up. So I was just thinking, what will happen if I knock on this door? And I remember at the time I heard lots of laughter, and also the meeting was going on at 6 that they have every week. And they couldn't hear me knocking. I was a bit late. And then I thought, oh, forget it. No, I'm not going to go back. It's not meant to be. And then a couple of days later, during the day, I knocked again, and a director called Andrew Loretto opened the door, kind of welcomed me in, said, "Here, let's get you involved." And it was just from that, really. And before then, I had no idea about how to get involved with the industry. So I'd say to anybody who is like a closet actor and wanting to give it a go, just go for the nearest thing you can go to, a workshop, a drama club. Doors will open from there. And that's what happened with me, because then I started doing work with Theatre in the Mill, got involved with Asian Theatre School. There was a lot of work with the BBC North, managed to find an agent, then did some bit of professional work on TV, theatre, radio, and then I kind of really wanted to develop my skills, so that's why when the drama school thing happened. But I think it's just that initial step is really hard, especially from our background, and knowing the kind of difficulties you've got to face within our own community as well. It's not seen as a kind of a respectable profession to be involved in.
Do you think that's still the case now?
Not so much now. It's changed over the last 10, 15 years, definitely. But no, I mean, with my family and my parents, friends and their children, they were all in academic careers, doctors, lawyers, So my career, also with theatre, it's like you can't see it, you don't know it exists until you actually go and see a play. So a lot of them didn't even know what I was doing until I did something on television, and then they went, oh, so that's
television is when you've made it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, to some parents, television isn't even when you've made it. It's when you're in a film. When you're in a Bollywood film.
Yeah, because when you tell people you're an actor, they're like, "What have I seen you in?" And if you say theatre, they're like, "Oh, I don't know theatre."
Yeah, they lose interest at the theatre point, don't they? We're gonna have to change that. I think you're gonna have to change that, Asif.
Well, that's what I find. I just find that our community doesn't understand what theatre is, really. I mean, partly because of what the profession has put out, and it hasn't been enough South Asian stories from playwrights from South Asian background, actors from South Asian background, but also it's like they don't give it. It's not the same as going to the cinema. If they want some entertainment, they'll put on a Bollywood film, they'll go to the cinema, but they won't think about going to the theatre to watch a play.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's what has to change.
It's interesting you mentioned playwrights and stories, because you don't just act, you're also a writer as well, aren't you? So where did that start? Did that start around the same time as acting, or were you always a closet writer as well, who just kind of like, when you got the opportunity to do that, you started going into writing as well? Because that's a lot of the work that you do now is writing as well as acting, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had an opportunity with Asian Theatre School at the time, because they did Street Voices. And we all had a chance to write a 15-minute piece and then have it performed within our cast of actors at Theatre in the Mill, West Yorkshire Playhouse, and Contact Theatre. So that was probably the first time I wrote something, and it was a brilliant way to create a part I have performed in it myself, my own piece. But the writing.
What was the first piece that you had written?
So it was called, and I can't find the script, and I'm gutted that I can't find the script. So an old computer somewhere. I really gutted that I can't find the script, but it was called Him, Them, and Me, and it was about a young boy who was schizophrenic and lived alone in his flat, and had made a friendship with this girl downstairs. But he was suffering from delusions of thinking people were listening in on him through plug sockets and various electronic devices, and that kind of led him to go to where the power supply is to the block of flats and do something there. So that was my little play.
You've got a thing about triple barrel titles, don't you?
I know. So it was, it just feels like such a long time ago. And it was a two-hander. But then in 2013, I started writing Combustion. And that was the first thing I wrote. And that was just literally just sitting on my couch at home. Just had an idea about these characters. I knew I wanted it to be funny. I knew I wanted to address issues concerning British Muslims and misconceptions about Muslims and Islam. And I just imagined these characters working as mechanics in this world in Bradford.
Yeah, and it was very authentic, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We were saying this afterwards. It was characters you could actually relate to. Like the hijabi character, for example. That's every hijabi girl I know growing up. They're not the quiet, timid little girls in the corner. Not if they're from Bradford, anyway.
Yeah.
And also the complexities of some of the stereotypes, So I think that's what I really liked about your writing. It was like, where you deal with a lot of things that are in the mainstream media, but you are approaching it from obviously a lived experience, from a different way. You're really unpacking some of those complexities. You mentioned Combustion was your first piece that you had written, but I think was it Love Bomb and Apples that you had performed in that? But was that part of, because you set up a theatre company called, is it Ike Productions or AIK Productions? Tell us about that.
And Productions, yeah. So that initially came just from my want to put on my own work. So I had no kind of particular interest in producing shows or having a theatre company. And this just simply came, Love Bombs and Apples came because there was a piece that I wanted to develop with this playwright called Hassan Abdul Razak. And it was brilliant. And I had a coffee with him and I sent him an email, said, I'd love to get this play on. I don't know how. I had no idea, but I'd love to get it on. I'd love to play the part. And can we think about making this? It was probably about 10, 15-minute monologue into a one-man show. And then from then on, we managed to get a reading at the Alcolo Theatre, and then a week's performance at the Alcolo Theatre. And then lots of the following year, a UK tour. We took it to Edinburgh. We took it to the States. But that just came from initially just a coffee and having no idea, but just wanting to pursue an idea, not having all the answers and being nervous about going down that path, which was a new path for me. And then, like I said before, once you start, the doors open, the opportunities open. And we got more out of that show than we ever imagined. Initially, we thought we'll be doing it with no funding in a small theatre space somewhere. And no idea that it would travel and be, would be able to take the show all around the country and abroad.
So how did you go?
So that's when it's kind of set up the idea that the learning process, because I learned a lot on through that about how to apply for funding, how to put a team together, and as an artist, then you feel you've got a certain amount of power to, if you like a piece of work, or if you want to write a piece of work that you want to put on somewhere, you know how to go about that. And you don't have to rely on other people helping you or other people doing that for you. So you're forcing the door open, basically. Instead of waiting for the door to open, it's difficult for people from our background, you're just forcing it. You're just going out there and doing it yourself and putting work on the stage. And from there, everything else then followed from there, because the Combustion, I co-produced the show with Tara Arts under the same name. And then the current show that we've got coming up in February, hopefully, depending on the pandemic. Again, it's the same thing. It's a co-production between Turtle Key Arts, who I did Love Bombs and Apples with, and me. And it was the same AIK Productions, which I wrote at the time because I didn't want to put my name. Don't know why. And then sort of that name's kind of stuck because that's the name we always apply for funding under.
Yeah.
So that relationship with the Arts Council, they know what work we've done under that name, and what our company and values are all about.
So is AIK Productions, would you class it as a theatre company, or is it just a name through
it's
which?
Just like producing name. So it could be, if I want to produce a show, that's what I would produce it under. Yeah,
but you have no aspirations for it to become
a company. No, I do. I just know that it's a big step. It's a big thing to take on. So at the moment, mainly I'm working as a freelance actor and writer. And then if there's a particular project where it's not being commissioned by a theatre, and I want to do it, then I can go down the route with AIK Productions and put it on myself. But I'm quite happy working freelance as an actor and writer for the time being. There may eventually be a point where I want to make a real theatre company, and employ more people, like the full team. But just because I'm happy doing what I'm doing at the moment. But that's not. I've not closed the door on that.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so, just as an extension of that, then, that whole story that you've just explained there is completely in line with us and with Tribe Arts, and the want of control and empowerment of making your own work and pushing the doors open yourself, as you said. But sort of with yourself though, what challenges would you say that you face as an artist of colour, while navigating the industry to have some of these experiences, producing, getting a team together? I mean, the challenges of getting a team, for instance, for people to understand, the story and the work that you're telling. We've definitely found that as a massive setback ourselves. What has your challenges been? And
also, staying true to that authenticity as well of representing, of course, going back to what you said about representing British Muslims in a particular light. So as part of that question, back of that, has that been a challenge for you when you've been trying to stay true to that? And because obviously you run the show yourself, as you're saying, you are freelance and you kind of work in your own time. So has there been any challenges that have affected you in that way?
I think there's a freedom when I produce my own work because I'm kind of my own boss, and you don't have to tailor things to fit someone else's vision as much. But I'm kind of a very much a team player. So when I wouldn't direct anything that I've written, I'd hand it over to a director I trust. I'd invite them to bring their own ideas. I wouldn't want to interfere in the rehearsal room. So I kind of very much theatre production is a team effort. But in terms of the story, that's important to me, especially now, to make sure we're represented properly. And that means with all the flaws as well. That means, all the nuances, everything about characters from South Asian background, put on the screen. So when our community watches, we recognize it straight away. And, just to make sure we don't, I think Pravesh said the term brown theatre for white people, and And I think there's truth in that. I kind of feel like the industry wants you to do that kind of work. I feel like if they commission you, generally they want you to do something safe. Whereas I like to take a risk and challenge people in my own community as well. Yeah. Because our people I know generally want to come and be entertained, like a Bollywood film, sit there, watch, enjoy, laugh. But, we want to be challenged as well about certain things. What's going on within our own communities that we ourselves want to talk about? And that's the difficulty at the moment, because sometimes if I presented work and said, I would like to do this particular project, I felt like theatres have been slightly afraid of it. Oh, are you sure about that? Because what will the British Muslim community think? Will we have riots outside the theatre? Even though I've written something from my own background about me, I want those people to come. It is for those people, and it's they will identify with it, because even if something makes you feel uncomfortable, as long as you know it's the truth, then that's what I want. So even if it makes me slightly uncomfortable, and there was moments in Combustion where I thought I was worried because I had some people saying, "Oh, are you sure you want to go down this route?" And talk about the Prophet, peace be upon him, for example. And I did, because there was a massive misconception there about the Prophet, and I wanted to tackle that in the play. I could have played it safe and not gone there, but I'm happy I did, because we didn't have any complaints from the Muslim community. I did another play called Imam Imran with the National Youth Theatre about a young lad from Bradford who becomes a famous soap star, but then almost becomes an imam towards the end. And there was elements of that people thought, "Oh, are you sure about that? That's kind of, you're right on the edge." And it wasn't, because lots of played it in Bradford at Carla Sangam. Lots of Muslim people came and loved it, and they didn't have any complaints about it.
Yeah,
well, I think it's because the RSC, same thing.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add to that. I think that might be to do with, I think, obviously the lack of knowledge and insight by a lot of white gatekeepers, for instance, that might interfere there. But as well, the whole cultural experience of Asians is being shaped all the time by India itself, which is evolving through their mainstream channels that are always blaring 24 hours a day in every Indian and Asian household. And that, I mean, they're taking risks, and the format of Bollywood films and TV shows and serials and all that kind of stuff has changed wildly in the last 10 years. Yeah. And new ideas are coming into those storylines, which are then obviously imparting. There's a lot more cultural awareness about certain things that is talked about in theatre. But going on, so I mean, that's obviously artistic risk. But like, what about some of the sort of practical challenges that you might have had as an artist of colour working in the industry? Obviously, getting your story told through the door by white gatekeepers is an issue. But once that's happened, is there any other sort of things that you've encountered as problems or issues that have been repeated, maybe on certain things that you've done?
Yeah. I think fundamentally there's an obstacle on all the levels: acting, stage management, playwriting, directing, being artistic director of a theatre. If you are not white, that will be a challenge for you, and you might not be able to even put your finger on exactly where those challenges have come, but it will be harder for you to succeed. So that in general, where as an artist that kind of a feeling inside that if I wasn't Asian, if I wasn't brown, then I think things would have been easier. Mm-hmm. I think the thing about risk taking, I think if they're going to take a risk, a theatre's going to take a risk with a play, which is a South Asian play or involves a South Asian playwright or cast, they want a certain element of safety to it. That's the thing I've found.
But would you say I'm gonna maybe play devil's advocate and maybe if you change that word from safety to censure,
So, yeah.
I think that's also an element where there's certain things that maybe a lot of white gatekeepers or people who are not Asian or black, that there's obviously a certain palatability about what they would like to see on stage. But do you get a sense of, I mean, I've definitely experienced this as an actor where, you know, certain white directors or producers or practitioners have almost tried to censure or control the way that the representation is because it doesn't quite fit their model?
Yeah. And kind of they want to see what they think you are rather than you being able to tell them who you are. I think they want to their interest is in things which don't concern you. We're all Asian, and little things like little cultural things, we don't. It's a daily thing for us. It's a kind of everyday thing. We are so we want to explore issues and themes which affect us within our community. It's remind me. I've lost my trail of thought.
I was just saying that in terms of you know, there's obviously a thin line between the word censure and safety. You know, what might be seen as safe, but you know, just going on from what you've just said there. I mean, I think also, do you think part of the problem is the fact that a lot of white people don't understand the complexity of just the word Asian itself? Like, you know, it's like seen as an homogenous sort of group, but actually includes so many different sort of cultural backgrounds in there. As a Sikh actor in the industry, you know, there's never any stories that I get to kind of really relate to apart from sort of general Asian things. I mean, well, there is, you know, we're obviously very close with other communities. But in terms of, you know, it's very rare that you see Sikh characters on there talking about Sikh issues.
It depends on the flavour of the month, doesn't it? Which Asian's in the limelight, and then you, as a brown person, will be playing that particular Asian because that's.
Because I've never, as an actor, I've never gone to an audition where I've actually played a Sikh character. I've always been a Muslim character, which is actually one of the reasons why I got my hair cut about 15 years ago, because I used to wear a turban, because I couldn't play, you know, Muslim characters with a turban on. So, you know, you actually couldn't do that. So I had to neutralize myself essentially and sort of be able to play all the gamut of sort of Asian characters.
Yeah.
And there is a homogeny forming in sort of British culture. When they talk about Asian, it is generally Muslim, and because that's what you see in the news, right? So that's the thing that, you know, a lot of white people, that's the first thing they hear about in the Muslim community is you know, terrorism or taxi drivers or local shopkeepers, or shopkeepers are probably more with Indians, isn't it?
Equally share that.
Yeah. But it is. I think these are some of the stereotypes that you like to kind of break down, don't you?
Yeah. I think the fact that when they see an Asian person, what do they expect to see? When they think of the British Muslim person, they don't think of the young British lad who refers to themselves as Muslim, and you know, but then drinks, goes out, parties, you know, goes out with girls and just goes to watch football, you know, just lives a normal young British bloke's life. That's not represented. It's always the pious Muslims or the extreme Muslims, or that kind of diversity is not there.
Yeah,
and sort of to break that stereotype, because even within the Muslim community, there's Muslims are of different races as well. So, you know, in Tartuffe, a show we did at the RSC, one of the characters was a Bosnian Muslim, and that was a good way to kind of break that stereotype, because that could have easily have been a Pakistani character. But the fact that she was white, she didn't dress like a Muslim, she didn't speak like a Muslim, but she was a Muslim, was eye-opening for a lot of people.
So let's move on to some of the success. Well, you've had a lot of successes, and also a lot of people would argue that, you know, I mean, I would definitely start saying that that you should be on the main stages, definitely not in the, you know, the spaces that are usually in the theatres for the smaller productions, which is, I suppose, a systemic problem in the industry, but that's a whole different conversation. But you recently won the Screenplay Awards, haven't you? Tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, that was you mean it was a shortlist. I think that's a shortlist.
Yeah.
So shortlisted for. So that was just a joint thing with Sky Studios, and it was. I'm just in the final shortlist of 15 writers,
Right.
and the person who I think 2 will eventually get the thing and write a play and a screenplay over the next year. So that's what that's for.
And when did you find out about that?
I think January.
Okay, so it's close. Yeah. So by the time this issue is out, hopefully you would have known. So obviously you have been recognised for a lot of the work that you've done. I mean, we certainly remembered every single one of the shows that we came to see. I mean, where do you envision the future of British Asian theatre? I mean, we're in a bit of a melting pot. We're in a bit of a situation. I mean, the society is in a bit of the whole theatre industry is in flux at the moment with coronavirus. But when all the chips land, do you think we're going to be in a better place or a worse place?
I think, unfortunately, we're going to have the industry is going to take a step back because of the pandemic. If they're going to put on theatre, they're going to take less risks. I'm worried there's going to be less Black and Asian work, but I like to be positive, so I don't like to think about that too much. So I've been writing projects. I've been writing over this year in lockdown a lot. I've got various plays in development that I'm hoping to see on the stage, and also you're thinking about other platforms as well. I'd like to write for film as well, television, and online. There's so much work going on online.
Yeah. So have you definitely moved from being? Would you say the scales have tipped a little bit to the writing more? Like, would you still class yourself as an actor?
Yeah. Because during the last few months during the pandemic, I haven't been able to get on the stage. We were 4 days away from opening a show when the first lockdown happened.
Same.
And then I've had a number of cancellations of various theatre work, which is still there, and it might happen soon, but hasn't been able to happen yet. So I knew that I could spend a lot of time writing. So I'm fortunate that I had commissions that I was working on for various theatres, and my own work, and just work on that in my own time.
So what's next then? So what's next for Asif? Obviously, you mentioned a play that you have been writing. What's going on with you in 2021 or beyond?
So if we go back to the show that we were about to open, which was Tartuffe at Birmingham Rep, we'd open that and play that in Birmingham. I was going to do Hamlet in the Cherry Orchard with Theatre Royal Windsor, which was put on hold. And then my own show, Jabala and the Jinn, which I wrote for children and families, which I'm hoping will open at the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry. And then I've got various writing commissions. So one for Birmingham Rep, started one for the Bush Theatre, and working with the English Touring Theatre and Rifco Theatre Company. So various kind of plays that I've got going on in my head, which are in different stages. Some are the initial kind of idea phase. Some I've got a first draft or a third draft, and just kind of desperate to kind of get in the room and explore them, even in an R&D kind of setup where I've got actors that I can hear the words, they can play the words, play the characters, and I can see what works and what doesn't, which I find really helpful. So there's a lot going on. It's just what will happen with the pandemic. So there's a lot just on hold.
But maybe you might use technology to put some of this work out if we go into lockdown for an extended period of time.
Well, we're definitely thinking, planning already, if we can't open the show in Coventry, to film it and live stream it. And that show would have been coming to Carlos Sangam in Bradford, had it not been for the lockdown, and other places. But it's just been devastating for our industry and theatres because they're just struggling at the moment. We're taking those. We're thinking about those Plan B options. Live streaming. It's not the same as live work, but it's at least you can then put your work out, and actually you get more people watching it or connecting to a wider number of people.
Well, let us know when any of this does get out. We'd love to feature it in the magazine, of course. I feel like we definitely know you a lot better now in terms of the man behind the stories. And it'd be great to see you acting again. I think anybody of Asian heritage or just anybody who enjoys theatre should come and see some of your plays. But Asif Khan, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us. The day has gradually got darker outside as we've been speaking. But yeah, hopefully we will speak post-pandemic.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys.